You never know when a simple flight will expose everything wrong with the world. For the passengers on Flight 502 that morning, it was just another routine trip from Atlanta to Las Vegas. But for three little girls, three 11-year-old sisters, it was the day innocence met injustice, and the sky itself had to decide what kind of world it wanted to be. The airport was alive with that usual chaotic beauty, rolling suitcases, the smell of coffee, and the hum of boarding announcements echoing under the high glass ceilings. Three identical girls stood close together, holding hands so tightly you'd think they were afraid of losing each other in the crowd. Nia, Nyla, and Nori Monroe. Three sisters who shared the same smile, the same curls, and the same birthday. They were flying for the first time since their Uncle Jamal had adopted them 2 years ago. Their eyes sparkled with wonder as they watched the planes taxi across the runway like silver birds in the sun. "Do you think they'll have warm cookies?" Nyla asked, tugging at her boarding pass. Nia smiled, always the calm one. "If they don't, we'll just imagine they do." And Nori, the youngest, whispered, "Uncle Jamal said we're sitting in first class. Does that mean we're famous?" The girls giggled as they reached the gate, where a tall woman in a Navy uniform stood waiting. Cassandra Brooks, the flight attendant in charge of boarding. Her hair was perfectly pinned, her lipstick flawless, her smile professional. But when her eyes fell on the three sisters, something behind that smile flickered. An almost invisible sneer. "Tickets?" she said crisply. Nia handed them over with her best polite voice. "Yes, ma'am. Seats 1A through 1C. Cassandra scanned the passes. Then she looked up again, her tone shifting slightly. "First class," she repeated. "Are you sure these aren't economy upgrades?" Nia blinked. "No, ma'am. Our uncle booked them." Cassandra gave a thin smile. "Of course he did." She tore the stubs, motioned them forward, and said under her breath, just loud enough, "Charity programs getting generous these days." The girls didn't understand what she meant. But a man standing nearby, a passenger with a briefcase, raised an eyebrow, sensing the edge in her tone. Still, Nia kept walking. Her mother used to tell her, "When people show you their smallness, don't shrink to fit them." The three took their seats in the front row. Everything was spotless. Leather seats, glass dividers, warm lighting. The kind of space meant to make you feel important. But Cassandra's eyes followed them like a shadow. Every move the sisters made, fastening seatbelts, whispering excitedly, seemed to irritate her. When Nyla reached for a blanket, Cassandra appeared instantly. "Those are for premium guests," she said flatly. "But our tickets say—" Cassandra cut her off. "I don't care what your tickets say. Just sit quietly, please." A hush fell over the front cabin. The man with the briefcase looked away, pretending to read. The girls did as they were told. Nori, sitting by the window, traced a finger along the glass. The clouds outside looked soft, endless. She whispered, "It's so pretty up here." "Yes," Nia replied softly. "It is, even if some people try to make it ugly." Cassandra passed again, balancing a tray of champagne for other passengers. When Nori smiled and said, "Good morning," Cassandra didn't respond. She didn't even look. Instead, she leaned toward another attendant and murmured, "Unbelievable. They'll let anyone up here now." The other attendant shifted awkwardly, not answering. The moment passed, but something in the air had changed. It's strange how cruelty often starts small. A tone, a glance, a word. The same way turbulence starts with just a whisper of wind. Halfway through the flight, the sisters began to relax again. Nyla hummed a song quietly while Nia drew doodles on her napkin. For a moment, it felt like peace. Then it happened. Nori, who'd been holding a cup of orange juice, tried to look out the window, and her hand slipped. The drink splashed across the armrest. A small, harmless mess. But to Cassandra, it was enough. She stormed over, eyes burning. "What did you just do?" Nori froze, trembling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." Before anyone could react, Cassandra raised her hand and slapped the child across the face. The sound was sharp, final. The entire cabin went silent. Naya gasped. Nyla cried out. Even the man with the briefcase looked up, stunned. Cassandra's voice cut through the silence. You people think rules don't apply to you. You think kindness is free. Naya's eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but disbelief. No one moved. No one spoke. The passengers sat frozen, caught between fear and shame. Finally, an older woman in coach stood up, her voice trembling. Ma'am, you can't just... Cassandra snapped. Sit down, or I'll have you removed. The woman sat. The world stayed quiet. And that's the moment, the silence, that hurt most of all. Nia reached for her sister's hand. Nori's cheek was red, her eyes wide with confusion. Why did she do that? Nori whispered. Nia didn't have an answer. She just held her tighter. Outside the window, the clouds drifted by, peaceful, detached, almost indifferent. No one on that plane knew what would come next. That somewhere above the clouds, justice was already awake, watching, recording, remembering. And while this wasn't one of those revenge stories where the hero fights back with fury, it would become something far rarer, a story where quiet dignity would move mountains and an entire airline. The plane leveled out over a blanket of white, the seatbelt sign chiming off like a small permission slip to breathe again. The hush after the slap felt unnatural. The kind of quiet that makes every sound, every clink of glass, every cough, feel too loud. Nia squeezed Nori's hand beneath the armrest and nodded once. I'm here. Nyla blinked hard, as if she could blink the moment out of existence. Cassandra passed through first class with the poise of a stage actor who never misses a mark. She flashed a perfect smile at the man with the briefcase, set a linen napkin on his tray with little ceremony, and poured champagne so smoothly the bubbles barely stirred. When she reached row 2, a young white couple apologized for not knowing where to stow a backpack. Cassandra's voice turned warm, near musical. No trouble at all. Let me handle it for you. She tucked the bag herself, then returned with a warm towel and a joke about turbulence that got a little laugh. When she approached the sisters' row, the smile disappeared. Keep your hands in your lap, she said, eyes on Nori's cheeks as if inspecting her own reflection. We don't want any more accidents. Nori stared at her shoes. She had tied the laces carefully at the gate. Now the bows looked messy, guilty somehow. Nyla tried to help, lifting the corner of a blanket with 2 fingers. Cassandra's hand snapped forward and plucked the blanket away. These are premium. They stain. The man with the briefcase glanced over, then back at his laptop. He tapped something into an email. His jaw worked like he'd just bitten a seed that wouldn't crack. An older gentleman across the aisle, silver hair, navy blazer, cleared his throat politely. Excuse me, would it be possible to get a juice for the girls? His voice was soft. He might have been asking for the time. Cassandra didn't look at him. Beverages come with meal service. I wouldn't mind paying now, he said gently. We're not a vending machine, she replied, still facing forward. Please let us do our jobs. He nodded, a little embarrassed, as if he had pushed a social button he didn't understand. The briefcase man pretended to scroll. Naya sat up straighter, the way she did in class when teachers asked trick questions. She made her tone careful, respectful. We don't need juice, ma'am. We're okay. Cassandra's eyes flicked to Nia, measuring. That's right, she said. You're okay. She left them with that line, the words hanging like a sign taped to their foreheads. They're okay. Nothing to see. A few rows back, a toddler started crying. The raw, open-mouthed crying of a kid who had been promised something and then had it taken away by gravity. Cassandra hurried there, kneeling so her eyes were level with his. Sweetheart, can I get you some apple slices? A warm towel? Let's make your ears feel better. She tucked the toddler's stuffed dog under his arm and rubbed tiny circles on his shoulder until the wails softened into sniffles. The boy's father mouthed thank you, and she mouthed back of course with a grin so sincere it looked like kindness. Nyla watched this with a bright flare of hope. Maybe she was just having a hard moment, she whispered. Maybe, Nia said. The word didn't convince her mouth. The service carts rattled forward, a quiet parade of clinks and lids. The scent of warmed bread drifted up first, then roast chicken, then something herbed and fancy that made everyone sit taller. Cassandra set down cloths and silverware in neat diagonals. When she came to the sisters, her hands slowed like a camera dropping frames. Children's meals are limited, she said. We've already allocated. Nori nodded eagerly, trying to be helpful. We can share. Cassandra's smile hardened. There's nothing to share. At row 2, she set a steak down with a flourish and asked about doneness like a sommelier. At the sisters' row, she placed 3 naked trays, no cutlery, no napkin, and a stack of water cups that sweated rings onto plastic. She slid 1 packet of crackers between them as if leaving a tip. Protein, she said. Don't make a mess. Nyla's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the crackers, then at the warm bread basket Cassandra lifted toward another passenger. The silver-haired gentleman across the aisle angled his tray a little toward the girls. They can have my roll, he said half to himself. Cassandra wheeled back so fast the cart nudged his knee. Sir, please don't redistribute service items. We have inventory counts. Of course, he said quickly, retreating to the neutral ground of his seat. Nia made herself breathe evenly. In for 4, out for 4. The way Uncle Jamal taught them when big feelings filled the room and left no oxygen for sense. She tore open the cracker packet and split the squares carefully, dividing into 3 stacks. Even distribution felt like dignity. Here, she whispered, placing the smallest stack in her own napkin. I'm not that hungry. Nori swallowed bravely and took a bite that clicked between her teeth, dry. She kept her eyes on the window. Outside, a river of clouds broke into islands. Excuse me? A woman behind them said softly to Cassandra. But won't the girls need utensils? They don't have meal service, Cassandra replied without turning, as if utensils were a privilege of the fed. I have extras, the woman offered. She lifted a fork like a white flag. Cassandra's head turned slowly. Ma'am, do you work here? The woman lowered the fork. No. Then please allow the crew to manage the cabin. The fork retreated. The woman looked at the 3 sisters and gave an apologetic smile that said, I tried. And also, I'm sorry I didn't try harder. Nyla hummed a tune under her breath, soft enough that it might have been a noise the plane made. Music filled the spaces words couldn't. Cassandra returned with dessert, thick wedges of chocolate cake balanced on chilled plates. She placed 1 at the briefcase man's seat, another at the young couple's, a third at the silver-haired gentleman's. When she reached the girls' row, she stopped. The plate hovered, fragrant, close enough to smell. Nori's eyes lifted, hopeful. Even Nia's posture loosened. Cassandra pivoted and set the cake at the next seat over. It wasn't an accident. The movement was so measured the insult rang louder than any slap could. The silence afterward did the rest. The briefcase man rubbed his temple. The older gentleman set his cake down untouched. Miss, the older gentleman said carefully, the menu card indicated dessert is included with all first-class seats. Cassandra's smile returned. The professional one. The one that made her teeth look almost luminous in the cabin light. It is, he gestured, palm up toward the girls. She glanced at the plate he'd left untouched. So it is. It took the sisters a second to understand. When they did, Nia reached for her sister's hands under the tray table, squeezed once. Do not break in front of her. A few rows back, the toddler giggled through a mouth now busy with apple slices. Cassandra high-fived him as if they'd shared a victory. Then she turned, all business, and stepped back into their aisle like nothing had happened. Any trash? She asked brightly. Nyla looked at the empty cracker wrapper in her palm. No, thank you, she said, voice steady. She folded the wrapper into a small, precise square and slipped it into her pocket, as if neatness could make the moment smaller. Cassandra lingered. as if waiting for something to spill. When it didn't, she moved on. Time stretched in that weird way it does when everyone is pretending to be normal. The engines hummed. Ice clinked. Pages turned. The cloud islands outside lifted into small mountains and then flattened into a smooth sea again. Nori leaned toward Nia. "If we had cookies," she whispered, "I'd give you the biggest one." Nia smiled without moving her mouth. "I know." From coach, a voice floated forward, a woman asking a question to another passenger, not quite a whisper, not quite brave. "Did you see that? Are we just not going to say anything?" No one answered her. Maybe they didn't hear. Maybe they didn't want to. Nia memorized that silence, its shape, its weight, the way it pressed on her chest like an extra seatbelt. She decided something then, not a dramatic vow, nothing that would make a trailer, but a small, stubborn promise. "We will not teach them how to break us." She straightened her napkin and smiled at her sisters. The kind of smile you give when there's nothing to celebrate except the fact that you're still here. "Window check," she said softly. The game they played to reset. 3 foreheads tilted. 3 sets of lashes lifted. 3 pairs of eyes watched light fracture across the wing. Outside, the sky looked endless. Inside, it felt very small. Cassandra swept back up the aisle, collecting plates that had been cleaned to emptiness and plates left untouched out of principle. She paused, studied the girls as if trying to place a face she'd seen somewhere before. Then she leaned close, voice low enough to be private but sharp enough to wound. "Don't get used to this," she said. "First class isn't for everyone." She walked away before anyone could answer. Nia didn't. She folded her hands, breathed in for 4 and out for 4, and counted clouds. "Quiet power," Uncle Jamal had said, "isn't a whisper. It's a choice." And right now, hers was to hold the line until help arrived, or until the world finally noticed what was happening right in front of it. The sky outside was the kind of clear blue that looked fake, like it had been painted just to trick people into believing the world was gentle. Inside the cabin, the quiet still carried a pulse. It had been an hour since takeoff, and everyone in first class had learned how to pretend nothing was wrong. Cassandra Brooks glided down the aisle again, her heels clicking in perfect rhythm with the hum of the engines. She'd spent the last 20 minutes chatting with passengers she deemed worth talking to. The businessman with the Rolex, the influencer live streaming her trip, the couple celebrating an anniversary. Every laugh she offered them sounded like applause for herself. But when she reached row 1, her expression froze. There they were again. The 3 little girls, still sitting upright, still quiet, still existing. "Refills?" she asked tightly, holding up a pitcher of juice. Nia shook her head politely. "No, thank you." Her voice was soft but steady. Cassandra's eyes narrowed, sensing the calm like a challenge. "You sure? Don't want to spill another one, do you?" Nori flinched before she could stop herself. Nyla reached for her sister's hand beneath the armrest, whispering something meant to sound like a joke. But the tension had already shifted. It was no longer about a mess. It was about power. Cassandra turned away, lips pressed thin, muttering something under her breath that sounded a lot like ungrateful. The businessman with the briefcase looked up again. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He didn't type anything this time. He just watched. A few minutes later, turbulence rattled the plane. Not bad, just enough to make the cups tremble. Cassandra moved fast, locking carts and checking latches. When she returned to the sisters' row, she found Nori clutching her cup, knuckles white. "Relax," Cassandra said sharply. "You're safe." "I know," Nori said quietly. But as the plane jolted again, a few drops of orange juice jumped from the rim and splattered on the tray table. Just a few. Barely anything. Cassandra froze. She stared at the tiny droplets like they were an act of rebellion. Then she slammed the pitcher down hard enough for it to thud. "Unbelievable," she hissed. "Do you children ever learn?" Naya stood up halfway, heart pounding. "It was an accident, ma'am." "An accident?" Cassandra's voice rose, cutting through the hum of engines. "You people always have accidents." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Even the air changed temperature. Passengers shifted, pretending to look at their phones, but their eyes betrayed them. Curiosity, discomfort, cowardice. Nori's lip quivered. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Cassandra leaned closer. "You should be." And then, before Nia could move, before Nyla could breathe, she slapped Nori across the face. The sound was sharp, flat, final, a crack that split the entire cabin in half. Nori froze. Her head turned slightly from the impact, her eyes wide but dry. For a second, she didn't even cry. It was too sudden, too unreal. Nyla gasped, standing up now. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice trembling. Cassandra stepped back, chest rising and falling. "Sit down," she snapped. "Before I have security meet us at the gate." Nia pulled her sisters close. "Please, please, don't touch her." Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't begging either. It was something in between, a voice that refused to surrender. The businessman across the aisle lowered his laptop lid. His hands were shaking slightly. The older gentleman with the silver hair stood, half a step into the aisle. "Miss, that's enough," he said. Cassandra turned on him. "Sir, stay out of this. These girls are being disruptive." He stared back, incredulous. "They're children." Cassandra's jaw tightened. "Then they should behave like it." Nia's eyes darted around the cabin. Every seat was filled with someone watching, people hiding behind screens, behind silence, behind fear. One woman mouthed, "I'm sorry," and looked away. Nori finally began to cry, the tears quiet and confused. Nyla rubbed her back, whispering, "You didn't do anything wrong? You didn't." But Cassandra wasn't done. "If you can't control yourselves," she said coldly, "I can move you somewhere more private." She reached toward the storage area behind the bulkhead. "We have a compartment for luggage and small equipment. It's quiet there. Maybe that's what you need." Nia's stomach dropped. "We're not luggage." Cassandra tilted her head. "Then stop acting like baggage." She motioned to another attendant. "Help me out here." The younger attendant hesitated. "Ma'am, maybe we should—" Cassandra cut her off. "Do it." The attendant stepped forward, eyes darting nervously. "Girls, could you please stand up?" Nia rose first, holding both sisters' hands. "We didn't do anything." Cassandra's reply was a whisper that felt like a slap too. "You existed." The passengers stayed frozen as Cassandra led the girls toward the small storage cabin near the galley. Nia could feel their eyes, some pitying, some empty, all silent. Nori stumbled once, and the businessman finally spoke, low but clear. "You'll regret this," he said. Cassandra didn't turn around. "Mind your business, sir." He did. Everyone did. Inside the cramped compartment, it smelled like metal and detergent. The door shut behind them with a heavy latch. A small overhead light buzzed dimly. Nori pressed against Nia's side, sobbing softly. "Why does she hate us?" Nia swallowed hard. "Because she doesn't know us." Nyla's voice trembled. "She can't do this, right?" Nia didn't answer. Her throat burned. She wanted to scream, to call for help, to hit the walls until someone noticed. But she remembered her uncle's words. "The world doesn't change when you shout. It changes when you hold your ground long enough for it to look at itself." So she took a slow breath. One, then another. She wiped Nori's tears with her sleeve and whispered, "We'll get out. We always do." Outside the door, the faint hum of the engines continued. Somewhere above the clouds, someone had already started recording. Someone who'd seen everything. The camera lens captured Cassandra walking back to her cart, straightening her uniform, the calm predator resetting her smile. And while the rest of the cabin pretended to read, a few passengers shared silent glances, like people who had just witnessed something they couldn't explain, but knew would haunt them. Nia closed her eyes. The air in the compartment was warm, metallic. Her heart beat against her ribs like it wanted to be heard. And above the steady hum of the plane, somewhere deep in the system, A red indicator light began to flash. Protocol D7 activated. The sky was listening now. The metal door sealed shut with a heavy click, swallowing the sound of the cabin behind it. The small compartment smelled faintly of disinfectant and engine oil, like the place where lost things ended up. A single fluorescent bulb flickered overhead, casting uneven light across the girls' faces. Nori pressed her palms over her ears. "It's loud in here," she whispered. It wasn't. The noise was all inside her head, the rush of blood, the echo of the slap. Nia knelt down to her eye level, steady and slow, like she'd done this before. "Breathe with me, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth." Nori followed, shaky at first, then steadier. Nyla sat against the wall, hugging her knees. "She really locked us in," she said quietly, almost as if she needed to confirm it out loud. "She did," Nia answered, voice calm but eyes burning. "But she won't keep us here for long." The light buzzed again, the hum of the engine seeping through the walls like a heartbeat. Outside, footsteps echoed. Cassandra's heels, pacing back and forth down the aisle, confident that no one would care enough to ask questions about 3 little girls out of sight. Nori sniffled. "Do you think she hates kids?" "No," Nyla murmured. "She hates something else. We just remind her of it." The words hung there for a moment, heavier than the air. Inside that cramped space, time stretched. Nia had lost track of minutes. Her watch had stopped blinking, maybe from the cold, maybe from fate. She listened to the faint clinking of glasses beyond the door, the sound of normal life continuing. The injustice felt enormous, but there was a strange stillness in her too, something that refused to break. When people talk about courage, they think of shouting, of fighting back. But sometimes courage is the quiet that refuses to die. Nia turned to her sisters. "We just wait. Someone will come." Nyla's brow furrowed. "What if no one does?" "Then we still wait," Nia said, "because we know the truth." It wasn't much comfort, but it was enough. 15 minutes passed before they heard the door handle rattle. The 3 girls stiffened. Cassandra's voice sliced through the metal. "You girls still in there?" Nia stayed silent. "I hope you're learning something," Cassandra continued. "Actions have consequences." Her words dripped with the kind of confidence only people in control can afford. She didn't expect an answer. She didn't need one. The footsteps faded again. Nyla's chest tightened. "She's really not letting us out." Nia leaned her head against the wall. "No, not yet." A thud from outside made all 3 jump. Then, softly, another voice, a woman's, rose just beyond the door. "Excuse me, ma'am," the woman said. "I heard crying earlier. Are there children back here?" Cassandra's tone turned sweet, practiced. "Just some restless passengers. Everything's under control." "Passengers," the woman repeated. "That didn't sound like—" "Ma'am," Cassandra interrupted, "please take your seat. It's for safety reasons." There was a pause. Then the shuffle of reluctant footsteps. The sound of the woman leaving felt like a door closing twice. Nori had started to shiver. The air inside the compartment was getting colder, thin. Nyla took off her cardigan and draped it over her little sister's shoulders. "Here," she said. Nori whispered, "Thank you." Nia rubbed her arms for warmth. The flickering bulb threw shadows across their faces, sometimes splitting, sometimes merging, like reflections on broken glass. To distract them, she asked, "Do you remember that thing Uncle Jamal said about the stars?" Nyla blinked. "That they don't shine because they're bright? They shine because the night's dark enough?" Nia smiled faintly. "Yeah, that." She wanted to believe it. That even now, locked away, unseen, they could still mean something. The minutes turned heavy. Nori's eyelids drooped, but each time she started to nod off, the door's shadow would shake her awake. From somewhere beyond, a faint argument rose. Cassandra again, sharp, defensive. "I told you, it's none of your concern." A man's voice followed, older, firm. "You don't treat passengers like that." "They're fine," Cassandra snapped. Then, why's that door locked? The silence that followed stretched thin. Inside, Nia looked at her sisters. Someone's asking questions, she whispered. The argument ended suddenly. Cassandra's voice dropped low. Dangerous. Sir, sit down, or I'll have the captain call security. And then, a softer sound. Not Cassandra. Someone else. The same woman's voice from earlier. I recorded everything, she said. The girls froze. They couldn't see her, but the sound of those words felt like oxygen flooding back into the room. I recorded everything. Nori looked at her sister. Did she say? She did, Nia said, a tiny smile breaking through. Outside the door, Cassandra's voice rose again. Desperate now. Give me that phone, right now. The woman's voice held steady. Touch me, and this goes live. Nyla gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. She's brave. She's smart, Nia corrected. There's a difference. The noise outside faded again, replaced by footsteps storming away. For the first time since being locked in, the girls felt the air change, less suffocating, more alive. Then came the faintest mechanical sound. A beep, followed by a soft hum. The girls glanced up. A small red light above the storage door had turned on. Nia frowned. What's that? I don't know, Nyla said. But the light pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat syncing with theirs. The light was part of a hidden system Jamal Monroe had installed months before. A digital safeguard meant for emergencies, designed to monitor cabin misconduct. It activated only when the system detected signs of distress. Crying, raised voices, the word help. The system had been silent for years. Until now. Outside, in the flight deck, a soft chime alerted the co-pilot. Captain, he said, puzzled. We've got a D7 alert from first-class storage. The captain frowned. What's D7? Passenger distress, child-related. The captain's eyes flicked toward the cockpit camera feed. Send a signal to HQ. Back inside the compartment, Nori leaned her head on Nia's shoulder. I want to go home. Nia kissed the top of her head. We will. Just a little longer. The faint red light blinked again, once, twice, 3 times, before glowing solid. Outside, in the cabin, Cassandra's voice cut through the air. Everyone stay seated. We're having some turbulence. But turbulence wasn't what was coming. Something far stronger was rising. Quiet, invisible, unstoppable. In that tiny metal room, Nia squeezed her sister's hands, her voice a whisper steady as steel. Hold on, the sky's watching now. And somewhere deep in the network of Skyline Air, a transmission began to upload, sending everything that had happened straight to the headquarters, straight to the man who had designed it to catch the world when it looked away. Jamal Monroe, the uncle who believed that dignity, when tested, could change the entire sky. The sound that woke them wasn't the engines this time. It was a whisper, small, human, and near. Girls, are you in there? Nia's eyes opened. The flickering light above them had gone steady, casting long shadows across the narrow compartment. For a heartbeat, she thought she was dreaming. But then the voice came again, firmer this time, soft with concern. My name's Evelyn, the woman said through the door. I heard crying. Nia scrambled to her feet, her voice cracking. We're here, please. Shh. The woman's voice hushed gently, not to silence her, but to calm her. Don't be scared. I'm going to get you out, okay? The latch clicked twice, once, twice, and then the door creaked open just enough for a rush of cold air to slip in. Evelyn Grant stood there, a small woman with gray curls pinned under a faded airline scarf. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were sharp, like someone who had seen too much of the world to be fooled by uniforms or smiles. Oh, sweethearts, she murmured when she saw their faces. What on earth did she do to you? Nia didn't answer. She just wrapped an arm around Nori, who was shaking. Nyla's lips trembled as she whispered, She locked us in here. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I figured as much. She looked over her shoulder, cautious. Listen to me. We have to be smart. That woman, Cassandra, she's dangerous, but she's also careful. She won't hit you again if there's light on her. People like that only bite in the dark. She reached for Nia's hand. Come on, we're going back to your seats. Nia hesitated. What if she gets mad? Evelyn smiled faintly. Then she'll have to get mad at me, and I've survived worse storms than her. They slipped out quietly, moving through the narrow galley. Most passengers were still in their seats, their faces glowing blue under the cabin lights, lost in movies or guilt. Evelyn guided the girls down the aisle, pretending to fix a service drawer when Cassandra turned her head. Cassandra froze. What are you doing? Evelyn's tone was light, practiced. Helping them back to their seats. They were frightened. Cassandra's face tightened. They needed discipline, not a babysitter. Evelyn didn't flinch. I worked 27 years for this airline, dear. I know the difference. Something in Cassandra's expression shifted. Fear, maybe, but too small to name. She straightened her uniform and hissed, Fine, but if they cause any trouble again, I'll have the captain. You'll do nothing, Evelyn interrupted quietly, because the moment you touch them again, the whole plane will know exactly who you are. Cassandra's eyes darted toward the cabin, where a few passengers were already watching. Someone had a phone half raised, pretending to check notifications. Another whispered into a headset mic. Evelyn smiled tightly. Eyes on you now, sweetheart. Smile for the sky. Cassandra forced a brittle grin and stormed off toward the galley. Back in their seats, Nia helped Nori buckle in. Evelyn crouched beside them. Are you girls okay? Any bruising? Nori shook her head. Just scared. That's normal, Evelyn said softly. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you keep going anyway. Nyla studied her. Why are you helping us? Evelyn paused. Because once, a long time ago, nobody helped me. The words hung heavy, soaked with a kind of truth that didn't need explaining. She stood and reached for her tote bag, pulling out a small handkerchief. Here, she said, handing it to Nori. Keep it. It's silly, but my grandmother embroidered this for me before my first flight. Said it was for luck. Maybe it'll bring you some too. Nori clutched the handkerchief like it was gold. A few rows back, a man with a phone held low in his lap whispered to his wife, I'm recording. If she comes back, we'll have proof. The woman nodded, eyes glistening. Just make sure someone sees it. Within minutes, the quiet rebellion spread. 3 phones, then 5, then 10. Tiny lenses glowing like fireflies in the dark, waiting. Nia didn't see them, but she felt it. The hum of something shifting. The silence wasn't cowardice anymore. It was focus. Witnesses waking up. Cassandra returned with the meal carts, her steps sharper than before. When she reached the sisters' row, Evelyn was still there, standing casually but firm as a wall. I thought I asked you to sit, Cassandra said, smiling too wide. And I thought I told you I don't take orders from bullies, Evelyn replied. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried, slicing through the cabin's quiet. Passengers turned. Cassandra froze for half a second, then laughed nervously. Oh, of course, she said, trying to regain control. No one's bullying anyone, everything's fine. But her voice cracked slightly on fine. Evelyn leaned closer, voice low but cutting. You might want to fix that smile, dear. It's slipping. The phones caught it all. As Cassandra moved away, Evelyn crouched beside Nia again. You're safe for now, she whispered. But you listen to me. People like her don't quit easy. Keep your seatbelts on, and no matter what she says, don't move. Nia nodded. Thank you. Evelyn smiled. You don't thank people for doing what's right. You just promise to do it when it's your turn. She patted Nia's hand and returned to her seat. 10 minutes later, Cassandra's voice echoed through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be making an unscheduled landing in Las Vegas due to a cabin disturbance. A murmur spread through the plane. Nia felt her stomach drop. What does that mean? Nyla whispered. Evelyn glanced back at them. It means she's scared. The red light above row 1 blinked again, steady, deliberate. Somewhere inside the airline's network, the Dignity recorder system was uploading. Evelyn took out her phone and opened a blank social feed. Her fingers hovered, then typed a single caption above the video she'd been quietly filming since she found the girls. If you see injustice, don't look away. She hit post. Within 60 seconds, the video found its first 1,000 viewers, then 10,000, then 100. Cassandra didn't know it yet, but the story had already escaped her hands. She stormed down the aisle, snapping at her junior attendant. Who told them we're landing? Who authorized that? But the younger woman just stared past her, toward the front of the plane, toward Nia and her sisters, sitting quietly, eyes locked on the window. The storm outside was gone. The sky had cleared again. Evelyn leaned across the aisle, catching Nia's gaze. Whatever happens next, she said softly, don't be afraid to be seen. Nia gave a small nod. Her fingers tightened around Nori's hand. The embroidered handkerchief caught between them like a tiny flag of hope. For the first time since the slap, she didn't feel powerless, because someone had seen, someone had listened, and someone, somewhere, was watching it all unfold. The plane had grown too quiet, not the comfortable kind of quiet. This one was heavy, charged, the kind that made every heartbeat feel too loud. Even the engine sounded uncertain, as if the machine itself knew something was wrong. Nia kept her eyes on the seatbelt sign, glowing faintly above her head. It was still on. Nobody had dared to move since the announcement about the unscheduled landing. The phrase echoed in her mind, like an unanswered question. Evelyn leaned forward from her seat, whispering just loud enough for the 3 sisters to hear. Don't panic, she's losing control. Cassandra paced near the front galley, trying to look composed, but her shoulders gave her away. Tight, jerky movements, her smile stretched thin. She was talking to the younger attendant again, her voice hissing low but sharp. I don't care what they posted, Cassandra snapped. We'll land, handle it quietly, and it'll disappear. These things always disappear. But this time, it wouldn't, because 10 rows back, a teenage boy had already mirrored Evelyn's video. Another passenger had sent it to her sister, who worked at Sky Lion Air headquarters, and another had tagged a journalist. The footage was spreading faster than turbulence. Nia tried to distract Nori by counting clouds outside the window. 1, 2, 3, she whispered. Nori's voice was small. Are we in trouble? No, Nia said. She is. The older gentleman across the aisle leaned forward, his expression torn between fear and admiration. Kid, he said softly to Nia, whatever happens when we land, don't say a word without someone there for you, all right? You just stay quiet. Nia nodded. I can do that. Ooh. She didn't know that her silence was already speaking louder than anything she could have said. At the front, Cassandra grabbed the intercom handset, trying to steady her tone. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be arriving in Las Vegas shortly. Please remain seated. She stopped mid-sentence when the cockpit door clicked open. The first officer stepped out, pale. Ma'am, HQ just called, he said quietly. What? They received a D7 alert from this flight. They're patching in an executive line. Cassandra frowned. That can't be right. The D7 is... The co-pilot looked uneasy. Child distress. It's automatic. It went live 30 minutes ago. She froze, color draining from her face. Who's on the line? He swallowed. The CEO. Evelyn noticed the way Cassandra suddenly stiffened, clutching the phone like it was the only thing keeping her standing. She exchanged a glance with Nia. Watch this, she murmured. Cassandra pressed the intercom to her ear. This is Cassandra Brooks, lead attendant on Flight 502. There's been a misunderstanding. The voice that came through was calm, measured, deep. Cassandra, this is Jamal Monroe. You're speaking to the man who built the system you just triggered. Her eyes widened. Sir, You locked 3 children in a compartment, he said quietly. You slapped one of them. That's not true. They were being disruptive and... You're lying, Jamal said. His voice didn't rise, but it hit harder than a shout. The cameras caught everything, and every passenger on that plane now has a copy. Cassandra's grip tightened on the receiver. Her breathing grew shallow. This isn't fair. Neither was what you did to them, Jamal said. Do you know who those girls are? She blinked, confused. No. Passengers, They're my nieces. Silence. The entire cabin seemed to hear it through the walls, even if no one heard the words. Something in the air changed, like gravity shifting direction. Evelyn's hand went to her chest. Good Lord, she whispered. Nia's heart thudded so loud she thought others could hear it. She didn't understand how Uncle Jamal's voice had reached the plane, but she recognized it instantly. The calm under pressure, the strength behind softness. From the cockpit, the captain stepped out, his face pale. Ms. Brooks, he said formally, please surrender your badge and headset. What? She stammered. Headquarters orders, he said. Effective immediately. Her hand shook as she unpinned her badge. It clattered against the floor before she could catch it. The younger attendant stepped forward, eyes wide. Is it true? The kids are… Yes, the captain said. The CEO's family. But that's not the point anymore. He looked toward the sisters. The point is, this never should have happened to anyone. Cassandra's lips trembled, her voice collapsing into something smaller. I didn't know who they were. Evelyn stood, her tone steady. You didn't need to know who they were. You just needed to know they were human. A murmur rippled through the cabin, one of those rare moments when strangers all think the same thing but don't need to say it. Cassandra sank into an empty jump seat, staring at her hands. The younger attendant quietly took over the service announcements. The captain went back into the cockpit. Evelyn leaned down beside the girls. You're safe now, she whispered. He's got you. Nori blinked, whispering, Is that really Uncle Jamal? Yes, Nia said softly, tears welling in her eyes. That's him. She didn't cry from relief exactly. It was something deeper, like her body finally releasing a truth it had been holding in since the slap. At that exact moment, Jamal Monroe was standing in a boardroom at Sky Lion Air headquarters, surrounded by screens displaying live feeds from the plane. He didn't raise his voice when he turned to his team. I want every passenger safe. No one leaves that aircraft until we have statements and evidence secured. Make sure those girls know they're not alone. One of his aides hesitated. Sir, the press already has the story. Jamal nodded. Good. Let them. Let the world see what happens when we stop pretending. Back in the cabin, the seatbelt sign dinged. The plane began its descent. Evelyn took the girl's hands. This landing won't be scary, she said softly. It'll be loud, but only because the world's finally listening. Nori sniffled, holding the embroidered handkerchief close. Do you think Uncle Jamal's mad? Nia smiled faintly. Not at us. The wheels touched the runway with a deep rolling thud. The moment they stopped, passengers broke into quiet applause. Not the cheerful kind, but something heavier, reverent, like paying respect to what had been endured. Cassandra didn't look up. Nia turned toward the window. Police cars and emergency vehicles lined the tarmac, their lights flashing blue and red against the evening sky. The reflection of those colors shimmered on the glass, painting her face in light and shadow. Look, Nyla whispered. It's like the sky's blinking. Nia nodded slowly. Maybe it's saying sorry. As they taxied to the gate, the intercom beeped one final time. The younger attendant's voice was trembling but clear. On behalf of Sky Lion Air, we'd like to thank our passengers for remaining calm during this unexpected situation, and for reminding us what dignity really means. The plane fell silent again, but this time, it wasn't fear that filled the space. It was something else, something softer, stronger. Evelyn squeezed Nia's shoulder. You did good, sweetheart, she said. The sky just called your uncle, and now the world's calling too. Nia nodded, holding her sister's hands. The engines hummed low beneath them, a sound that no longer felt frightening, just steady, alive, listening. The plane rolled to a stop at Gate 14 of Las Vegas International, but no one moved. Seatbelts still clicked across silent laps. No chatter, no impatient unbuckling. Only the hum of the engines cooling and the strange stillness that comes after something too big to speak about. The flight attendants had vanished into the galley except for Cassandra, who sat slumped in the jump seat, eyes glazed and hollow. Her lipstick had faded. Her hair had come loose from its perfect knot. The once immaculate uniform now looked like a costume someone forgot to take off after the show ended. Evelyn rose slowly, her joints creaking. "Stay here," she murmured to Nia and her sisters. "They'll board soon." "What's happening?" Nyla whispered. Evelyn glanced toward the window. Through the oval glass they could see them: airport police, corporate security, and a line of dark SUVs, their hazard lights pulsing in unison like a heartbeat. "Justice," Evelyn said quietly. "That's what's happening." A man in a dark suit stepped onto the plane first, his badge glinting beneath the fluorescent lights. "Captain Reynolds?" The pilot came out, composed but weary. "Yes, sir." The man nodded once. "This aircraft is now under Skylion executive control. We'll begin passenger disembarkation after statements are taken. Please cooperate fully." Passengers exchanged nervous glances. Cameras were still rolling, though most hands trembled too much to hold them steady. The man turned toward Cassandra. "Ms. Brooks, you'll come with us." Cassandra's voice cracked. "I didn't know who they were, I didn't—" He cut her off calmly. "That's the problem. You shouldn't have needed to." Two security officers stepped forward. She tried to stand tall, but her knees buckled. As they led her past row 7, where the sisters sat huddled together, she couldn't meet their eyes. Nia didn't look away. For the first time, she wanted the woman to see her, to know that the little girls she'd locked away were still standing, still breathing. When the officers disappeared with Cassandra, the man in the suit turned toward the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Lawson, Director of Operations for Skylion Air. We are deeply sorry for what you've witnessed. Our CEO is en route and will speak personally once the passengers have safely disembarked." Evelyn raised a hand. "Before that, these children need medical attention." He nodded immediately. "We have pediatric responders waiting on the jet bridge." "Ma'am, thank you for your courage." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Just doing what's right." But when she looked at Nia, her calm, steady face, framed by tears she hadn't even realized she was holding back, she felt something deeper. Not pride, not relief, faith. As they stepped off the plane, the cold blast of terminal air hit them like a wave. Dozens of cameras flashed from behind a barricade. Reporters shouted questions that blended into one endless roar. "Are they the CEO's nieces? Was there violence on board? Is Skylion covering up a racism scandal?" Evelyn wrapped her arm protectively around the girls as paramedics ushered them forward. Nori clutched her handkerchief, the fabric now damp from her tears. A woman in a navy suit met them at the gate. "Miss Grant? Girls?" Evelyn blinked. "Yes?" The woman smiled gently. "Mr. Monroe asked me to take you straight to the executive lounge. He's waiting for you." The walk through the terminal felt endless. Every step echoed with whispers, some sympathetic, others skeptical. But the girls kept their heads high, guided by Evelyn's hand and the quiet strength that comes after surviving the storm. When the elevator doors opened into the private lounge, everything felt softer. Warm lighting, leather chairs, fresh fruit on the table, comfort crafted by people who knew money couldn't buy peace, but could at least rent it for an hour. And then Jamal Monroe stood up. He was taller than Nia remembered, his charcoal suit immaculate, but his eyes, the same calm steel she'd heard through the phone, were filled with something she'd never seen before: grief and pride. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled all 3 girls into his arms. "You're safe," he whispered. "I'm here now." Nori started crying first, then Nyla. Finally, Nia let the tears fall too, the kind that don't ask for permission. Evelyn stood a few feet away, her own eyes glistening. Jamal turned toward her. "You must be the woman who refused to look away." Evelyn smiled softly. "I couldn't, not after what I saw." He nodded. That makes two of us. A corporate investigator entered quietly, handing Jamal a tablet. Sir, the footage is verified and uploaded to the legal archive. The crew is in custody. The pilot's cooperating fully. Good, Jamal said. And the passengers? They're all giving statements. Public sentiments exploding online. Hashtags trending worldwide within the hour. Evelyn looked uneasy. The world's watching already? Jamal sighed. That's how it always happens. Injustice travels faster than truth. He turned back to the girls. But this time, truth got a head start. He crouched so he was eye level with Nia. You did everything right, he said softly. You kept calm. You protected your sisters. Nia's voice quivered. I was scared. That's how brave people feel, he said. Nyla sniffed. Is she going to jail? Jamal hesitated. That's for the courts. But yes, there'll be consequences, not just for her, for the system that let her believe she could get away with it. He gestured toward the wall of screens behind him. One displayed a live feed of Skylion headquarters. Another, news anchors replaying the footage Evelyn had posted. Beneath it, a single headline scrolled. Flight attendant hits 3 black sisters. Sky responds. As the girls sipped cocoa brought by staff, Jamal pulled Evelyn aside. We'll need your testimony, he said. It'll make the difference between accountability and cover-up. You'll have it, she replied. But I have to ask, why do this yourself? You could let PR handle it. Jamal smiled faintly. Because I built this company to prove systems can be fair, and if I hide behind lawyers now, I become the thing I swore I'd fight. He paused, glancing at the sisters. Besides, this isn't a press story, it's a human one. In the quiet that followed, Evelyn watched Jamal kneel beside Nori, helping her unwrap a lollipop the paramedic had given her. He was gentle, patient, fatherly. Not the trillion-dollar executive people saw on magazine covers, but a man who'd crawled through injustice his whole life and still believed in gentleness. She thought about what she'd told the girls on the plane, that people like Cassandra only bite in the dark. And now here they were, bathed in light, their dignity intact. That was justice, not revenge, restoration. Outside the terminal, reporters swarmed, hungry for statements. But Jamal didn't appear. He stayed inside with his family, holding them close as the world argued outside about policy, race, and headlines. When a Skylion public relations officer approached nervously, holding a draft statement, Jamal took the paper, read it once, and shook his head. Rewrite this, he said. It's not about optics. It's about truth. Start with 3 words. We are accountable. That night, as the sisters slept safely in the hotel suite, Nia woke briefly and looked out the window. The city below was glowing, a sea of neon in motion. Nyla stirred beside her. Can't sleep? Nia shook her head. I keep thinking about that door, how dark it was. Nyla turned over, drowsy. It's over now. But Nia's voice stayed steady, a whisper into the night. No, it's not over. It's starting. Because deep down, she knew her uncle wasn't the kind of man who just fixed problems. He exposed them. And the woman who'd hurt them was only the beginning. They brought everyone back to the jet bridge. Passengers, crew, medics. Like a small town gathered on a single street after the storm. The door to first class stood open. Lights warm, rows tidy. A stage waiting for a final scene. David Lawson, the operations director, asked politely, then firmly, Please return to your seats. There's something you need to see. Evelyn squeezed Nia's shoulder. You okay, sweetheart? Nia nodded. We're ready. The sisters stepped back into row 1, buckled in as if the belts could hold more than bodies. The cabin buzzed with the low thrum of whispers and phones on standby. A few minutes later, Jamal Monroe entered. No entourage, no podium. Just him in a charcoal suit, tie loosened like he'd been running and refused to stop for breath. He stood in the aisle beside the bulkhead screen. Thank you for staying, he said, voice calm, steady. My name is Jamal Monroe. I'm the CEO of Skylion Air. A murmur rolled down the cabin. Some phones lifted higher. "I owe you the truth," he continued. "Not a statement, not a spin, just the truth." He nodded toward the forward monitors. David entered a code on a small console near the galley. The screens flickered from a looping safety card to a grid of time-stamped clips. A label blinked at the corner. Dignity Recorder, Flight 502. The first clip rolled silently at double time. Cassandra's smile for one passenger, her cold shoulder to the next. The blanket withheld. The cake detoured mid-air. Then the speed slowed. The glass caught the artificial daylight as orange juice trembled in a small hand. Cassandra's shadow cut across the frame. The slap landed. The cabin went still again, even though the room they were in was already silent. Someone in row 5 sobbed once and covered her mouth. The older gentleman across from the girls watched with his cake still untouched, eyes bright. The businessman with the briefcase closed his laptop and stared at the screen like confession. The feed cut to the corridor outside the storage space. Cassandra's hand on a latch. A small shoulder passing into shadow. Another angle, shot from a passenger's phone. Evelyn's, time-stamped, steady. Cassandra's face, too close to the lens to hide anything. When the montage ended, the screen went black for half a breath. Then a live feed appeared. A conference room half a continent away. Rows of nameplates, small flags, and the soft glow of cameras. A caption in the lower third read, "International Council on Aviation Ethics, Emergency Session." In a side-by-side window, UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, observer line. Jamal didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You weren't just witnesses," he said to the cabin. "You were part of a test. A system we designed to catch patterns of harm that people have learned to ignore. Not a trap. A mirror." He let that sit. "The Dignity Recorder runs on every Skylion aircraft," he continued. "It listens for distress signals, flags irregular service patterns, and, when necessary, pulls video from cameras we legally installed to protect passengers and crew. It only activates when 3 things happen together: a distress keyword, a raised voice, and a child's cry." He looked at Nori. "It activated today." Nori held the embroidered handkerchief tighter, Nyla's fingers laced with hers. Nia sat very still, as if movement might break the moment. "I didn't create this to catch bad people," Jamal said. "I created it to make good people brave." On the screen, a councilwoman with silver hair leaned toward a mic. "Mr. Monroe, the evidence is clear. We're prepared to issue a public recommendation by morning. Mandatory dignity protocols across partner airlines." In the UN window, an observer spoke softly. "We concur. We've been waiting for verifiable data, not anecdotes. You've provided it." Phones lifted again, not to doom scroll, but to remember. To say I saw this with my own eyes. Evelyn stood part way, then sat, unsure if standing was allowed in a moment like this. Jamal noticed and offered a small nod. "Thank you." She nodded back. "No, thank you." From the back, a voice, shaky, the younger attendant, spoke up. "Mr. Monroe." I should have stopped her sooner. Her eyes filled, cheeks blotched with the heat of shame. I froze. I thought I needed permission. Jamal faced her gently. "You needed company," he said. "Systems make silence feel safer than truth. That ends here." A ripple of breath moved through the cabin. The kind people take when they realize their lungs have been half full for an hour. He looked to the seats. "For those of you who filmed, who asked questions, who posted, thank you. For those who stayed quiet and wish you hadn't, thank you for staying now. We're not measuring perfection. We're building muscle." On screen, the council chair adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Monroe, will Skylion release this footage publicly?" Jamal glanced at Naya. "Not without the consent of the only people whose consent matters." He lowered to the girl's eye level. "It's your story. You decide how the world sees it." Nia blinked, surprised to find the room waiting for her. She looked at her sisters, then at Evelyn. The handkerchief's thread winked tiny stars under the cabin lights. Naya cleared her throat. "If this helps other kids," she said, voice small but clear, "then yes." Jamal nodded slowly. "Then yes," he repeated to the screens. "Release it, with names protected except mine. Hold me accountable first." Applause started awkwardly in row 3, then spread, soft, uneven, real, not for spectacle, for relief. The businessman with the briefcase raised his hand. "I'd like to apologize," he said, standing. His voice shook. "Not for what I did, but for what I didn't. I saw it. I didn't stand soon enough." He turned to the girls. "I'm sorry," Nyla whispered. "Thank you." It sounded like forgiveness, not absolution. David stepped forward with a small plexi case. Inside sat a charcoal gray card the size of a passport. He handed it to Jamal. Jamal faced the cabin. "Final thing," he said. "Effective now, Sky Lion is activating dignity status on this route. It means any employee who intervenes to protect a passenger's dignity keeps their job. No retaliation, no blacklisting. And any passenger who does the same flies free for a year." Evelyn laughed once, startled. "You can't be serious." "I can," he said. "And I am." The screen shifted to a simple slide. "Everyone belongs in the sky." A hush settled that didn't hurt, the kind that accompanies vows. Jamal turned back to the sisters. "You ready to go home?" Nori nodded. "Can we still have cookies?" Jamal smiled. "We can do better." He looked to David. "Fresh meals, for everyone on board, the good kind." David grinned. "Already ordered." As crew moved gently through the aisle, the younger attendant paused by the girls. She bowed her head. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Nia met her eyes. "Be brave next time," she said, not unkindly. The attendant swallowed and nodded. A promise recorded nowhere and worth everything. Evelyn leaned in close. "You see?" she murmured to the girls. "You didn't have to shout to be heard." Naya exhaled. A long, steady breath she hadn't realized she was holding since the storage door clicked shut. The cabin felt bigger now, the windows wider, the sky closer. On the screens, the council adjourned. In the aisle, the world rearranged itself by inches, quietly, publicly, for everyone. News doesn't walk anymore. It runs. By the time trays of hot food reached row 1, the first upload had already cleared Sky Lion's legal archive and hit the company's official channels. The cabin watched a counter spin like a slot machine. 1 million, 2, 5, until the numbers blurred into disbelief. Within an hour, the video of Cassandra's slap and the storage room lockup crossed 10 million views. By midnight, it would surge past 40 million. The caption stayed simple, the same line Evelyn had typed on her phone. "If you see injustice, don't look away." Hashtags braided themselves out of the crowd. "Everyone belongs in the sky," and #dignity recorder rose to the top of every platform. People stitched and duetted their own moments of looking away, of wishing they hadn't. Airline workers wrote long threads. "I've seen this. I was scared to speak." Parents posted photos of their kids sleeping on window seats, cheeks against glass, with captions that read like prayers. Cassandra's name trended, then choked in a flood of new detail. The first official announcement confirmed what Jamal had promised. She'd been suspended on the jet bridge and detained by airport police. But within hours, the bigger story broke. David Lawson stood in the executive lounge, sleeves rolled, eyes red from too many screens. He set a folder on the table in front of Jamal, a folder that looked heavier than paper should. "We pulled HR audit logs," he said quietly. "Started with Cassandra's file. We didn't have to dig far." Jamal opened it. The first page summarized 48 prior complaints involving discriminatory remarks or disparate service, 48, filed across 6 years. Many were resolved with the same phrase stamped in thin gray type, "insufficient evidence." Jamal flipped to the signatures. The same manager's name appeared again and again, tidy and unbothered. Evelyn read over his shoulder. They buried it. David nodded. And not just hers. He tapped a spreadsheet. A pattern across first-class crews on 3 long-haul routes. The complaints stall at the same desk, get counseled, then disappear. Who signed the counseling memos? Jamal asked. David pointed to a printed org chart. Area supervisor, promoted last year. The one who briefed Cassandra's team this morning. Jamal's jaw tightened. Get legal. And compliance. We're going upstream. He picked up the lounge phone. The call wasn't public. It wasn't dramatic. It was the opposite. Procedural, formal, lethal. This is Monroe, he told the general counsel. Open a full internal investigation under whistleblower protection. Lock the audit trails. Notify federal regulators within the hour. No NDAs, no quiet exits. If anyone deletes a file, call the DA. He hung up and looked at the girls. We're not just fixing a person, he said softly. We're fixing a pipeline. Outside the lounge glass, a dozen microphones crowded the terminal like flowers left at a gate. Sky Lion released a 3-sentence statement while the longer address was drafted. It began the way Jamal had insisted. We are accountable. We failed 3 children today. We will not fail them, and you, again. Commentators on late-night panels tried to shape the narrative and then stopped, mid-shaping, when the council clips rolled. The ethics vote. The UN observers line about data over anecdotes. The story had a spine now. It didn't need punditry to stand up. Back at Gate 14, uniformed agents escorted 2 additional crew members off the plane. Quietly, without handcuffs. One of them, the younger attendant, paused, turned to Evelyn, and whispered, "Thank you." Evelyn touched her arm, a small benediction. Do the right thing in your statement. The attendant nodded like someone who finally knew which way was forward. The pilot, Captain Reynolds, requested to address the cabin before release. He stood by the forward bulkhead, hat in his hands, voice lined with dignity and shame. I've flown since I was 22, he said. I have landed in crosswinds you could stand up in. Today was harder. I saw something wrong in my cabin and trusted the wrong person to fix it. That won't happen again on my aircraft. The cabin didn't clap. They didn't need to. Respect can be quiet, too. In the lounge, an investigator briefed Jamal. We've taken sworn statements from 12 passengers and 3 crew. We've secured internal messages, including a group chat where Ms. Brooks referred to teaching charity kids how FIRST works. Evelyn exhaled through her nose. I worked with a Cassandra in 1989, she said. Different name, same script. Jamal nodded. We're changing the script. He walked to the window with Nia, Nyla, and Nori. Down on the tarmac, a Sky Lion shuttle rolled, headlights pooling across painted lines. The city blinked in sequins beyond. Jamal crouched to their eye level again. You may hear a lot of grown-up words the next few days, he said. Policy, litigation, protocol. I want you to remember different ones. Nori sniffled. Which ones? Witness, he said. And repair. Nia studied his face. Are we in trouble? No, Jamal said gently. We're in history. The girls smiled. Small, fragile, true. A knock at the door. The general counsel stepped in with the HR chief, who looked like she hadn't breathed since lunch. We've completed preliminary findings, the lawyer said. Pattern and practice are clear. We're recommending immediate termination for Ms. Brooks and 2 supervisors, mandatory retraining for 57 crew, and referral of obstruction concerns to law enforcement. And the passengers who stepped in? Jamal asked. We're drafting commendations, she said, blinking in surprise. And the free-year policy you announced will have terms by morning. Make the terms simple, Jamal said. No fine print. Dignity isn't a coupon. He turned to David. Board meets at 6 a.m. Tell them we're not negotiating with our conscience. David's brow lifted. They'll push back on cost. Then they can find a cheaper industry, Jamal said, and the room understood he wasn't speaking metaphorically. On the terminal screens, news anchors cut to live scenes outside the airport. Strangers holding handmade signs that popped up like wildflowers after rain. We saw, we heard. Never again at 30,000 feet. A choir from a local church arrived uninvited and sang low, comforting harmonies that bled into the rush of air vents and rolling suitcases. The older gentleman from row 1 stepped to a camera and said, "I ate cake while 3 girls ate nothing. That won't sit right in my stomach for a long time. Don't edit that out." The clip ricocheted across timelines, not as guilt porn, but as a map out of silence. Meanwhile, Sky Lion's back-end systems lit with whistleblower pings from other routes. A Miami flight, a Newark red-eye, a transatlantic. Stories poured in, small humiliations and large ones, breadcrumbs forming a trail straight to a locked drawer in middle management. At 10:37 p.m., the company posted the audit summary. 48 complaints, 6 years, 1 gatekeeper. The PDF wasn't hidden behind legalese. It was written like a confession. Within minutes, a district attorney announced a joint inquiry with federal regulators. Another headline followed. Sky Lion pledges full cooperation. CEO waives executive privilege for internal communications. The business press called it risky. The comments called it rare. The girls didn't call it anything. They were busy sharing a bowl of strawberries and laughing, finally, at a dumb airline safety cartoon on mute. Evelyn watched them and felt something uncoil inside her that had been tight since her first uniform fitting decades ago. "You know what this feels like?" she asked Jamal. "Tell me." "Like the cockpit door opened and fresh air got in," she said. "We've been breathing recycled fear for so long." Jamal smiled, lines softening. "We're going to change the filters." Near midnight, a final alert buzzed every phone in the lounge. Council passes emergency recommendation. Global dignity protocols adopted by partner carriers. The vote tally filled the screen. It wasn't close. Jamal let the moment pass through him without ceremony. Then he looked at Naya. "You made a hard choice earlier," he said. "To let the world see." Naya nodded. "If it helps other kids." "It already has," he said. "More than you'll ever know." Down in baggage claim, Cassandra walked, flanked by 2 officers, past a vending machine humming with neon. No cameras followed her there. Consequence rarely gets a spotlight. It just does its work. Back upstairs, the lounge lights dimmed. The city went on flashing, as if trying to convince itself it was awake. The sisters curled against each other on a couch big enough to be a cloud. Evelyn tugged a blanket over their knees. The premium kind Cassandra had guarded like treasure. It felt warm, ordinary, undeservedly tender. "Sleep," Evelyn whispered. "The hard part's over." Jamal shook his head slightly. "The worst part is," he said. "The hard part's what comes next." He stood at the window with his hands in his pockets and watched a Sky Lion jet lift into the dark, a thin line of light braiding its tail. The plane climbed steady. No drama, exactly as an honest thing should. Outside in the terminal, the last headline of the night slid across a screen like a benediction. From silence to signal, how 3 little girls made the sky listen. Morning light slid through the hotel curtains like mercy, pale and forgiving. For the first time in 24 hours, there was no announcement, no crowd, no engine hum. Only stillness and 3 small breaths rising and falling under the same blanket. Jamal Monroe sat in the chair by the window, watching his nieces sleep. He hadn't slept himself. A stack of news briefs glowed on his tablet, their headlines sharp in the half-light. Sky Lion CEO shuts down racism cover-up. UN praises Dignity Recorder Program, Passenger Dignity Act drafted in Congress, but none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that the 3 girls on the bed were safe, dreaming of anything but fear. He closed the tablet and whispered to no one. That's enough noise for one lifetime. In the next room, Evelyn stood at the counter, making tea in a hotel mug. She didn't trust herself with silence. It had too many echoes. When Jamal joined her, she passed him a cup. "You haven't closed your eyes, have you?" she asked. He smiled tiredly. "Not yet." You? Not really. The mind keeps replaying it. The sound of that slap. He nodded slowly. The sound that changed everything. Evelyn looked at him. I've worked airplanes for 30 years. I've seen rudeness, arrogance, power trips. But this one, she shook her head. This one broke something in people. Maybe that's what it took to fix it. Jamal leaned against the counter. I didn't design Dignity Recorder to punish anyone, he said quietly. I built it to wake people up. And now that they're awake? She asked. He looked out the window, where the desert sun was turning the runway gold. Now we teach them how to stay awake. Later that morning, the hotel ballroom filled with reporters, union reps, and Skyline employees flown in overnight. The company had called it an emergency ethics assembly, but it felt more like a trial, or maybe a renewal. Jamal walked to the podium without notes. The camera lights flared white across his suit. Yesterday, he began, we failed 3 passengers, but failure only ends the story if we stop there. Today, we begin the repair. He outlined the new reforms in plain language. No PR spin, no applause breaks. Every Skyline aircraft would carry the Dignity Recorder system, linked to an independent ethics board. Complaints could no longer be buried under insufficient evidence. Whistleblowers would receive legal protection and financial incentives, not punishment. And most radically, passengers who intervened to defend dignity would receive lifetime travel benefits. He paused, letting the last one land. Because courage should have a seat too. A murmur swept through the hall. Disbelief, then pride. Then he held up a single photograph. Nia, Nyla, and Nori, holding hands in their first-class seats, facing the window. The image had already become iconic, shared, painted, turned into art overnight. These 3 girls reminded us that dignity isn't luxury, he said softly. It's the ticket itself. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, Cassandra Brooks sat in a small conference room, wrists free, but future gone. 2 investigators reviewed her written statement. Her lawyer whispered strategy. Blame fatigue, blame stress, blame training gaps. But Cassandra barely heard him. The mirror on the wall wasn't a mirror. She knew that now. A camera blinked behind it, recording her stillness. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. The cruelty that had once felt like control now felt like noise in her own head. Back at the hotel, the sisters were up and dressed, hair braided, matching ribbons clipped neatly. Nori twirled in front of the mirror. Do we have to talk to reporters again? Just one, Nia said. Uncle Jamal said it's important. Nyla frowned. But we already told everyone what happened. Yeah, Nia said, tying her ribbon tighter. But now we tell them what comes next. When they entered the ballroom, every camera turned. Jamal stepped down from the stage to meet them halfway. He knelt, not for show, but because dignity sometimes means lowering yourself to the height of those who taught you something. Girls, he said gently, they'd like to hear your words. Only if you want to. Nia looked at her sisters, then faced the crowd. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. My uncle says people are talking about us, she began. But we're not the story. The story is what happens when people stop pretending not to see. The room went silent. Even the camera shutters paused. Nori added softly, and we're okay now, because people helped. Jamal smiled, eyes wet. Evelyn clapped once, softly, and the audience followed. Slow, reverent, a sound like healing. Outside, the world was still turning. Airlines around the globe began installing their own dignity sensors. Governments debated accountability laws. People online used the story as a mirror for their own industries. Schools, hospitals, offices. But the biggest change didn't come from systems. It came from people quietly rewriting their reflexes. From looking away to looking closer. At airports, attendants started greeting passengers with softer eyes. In coffee shops, strangers stood up when someone was treated poorly. In classrooms, teachers replayed the clip and asked, "What would you have done?" And somewhere, in 1,000 comment threads, People typed the same sentence Evelyn once whispered in the dark. It's not revenge. It's repair. That evening, when the family finally flew home on a private company jet, no cameras, no headlines. Nia sat by the window again, watching the clouds drift by. The steward on this flight was a young man who'd only joined Sky Lion 2 months ago. He crouched to eye level, offering them milk and cookies. Real ones, he said with a smile. Nori grinned. You're nice. He laughed. That's the new rule. When he walked away, Nia looked at her uncle. Do you think the world's really different now? Jamal smiled faintly. Not yet, but it's awake, and that's the first step. She nodded, leaning her forehead against the cool glass. The clouds below looked softer than before, like the sky itself had learned how to hold people gently. Far below, in a newsroom on the ground, the evening anchor signed off with a line that had begun circling the world. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it lands quietly. And somewhere between heaven and earth, on Flight 502's next route, a new message shimmered on every cabin screen before takeoff. Every passenger carries dignity. Protect it like flight itself. But 2 hours ago, it had pulsed red. That pulse had reached the airline's ethics portal, activating an internal distress alert. The system had listened when people didn't. Across the aisle, the other passengers sat in strained silence. The woman in pearls scrolled through her phone with shaking fingers. One of the businessmen had quietly folded his newspaper and set it aside. They didn't dare make eye contact with Mina, but they didn't look away from her either. Guilt has a way of demanding witnesses. And behind the curtain in the galley, Yuri Tanaka waited, her back pressed to the cool metal counter. The intercom's click still echoed in her chest. She wasn't sure what she feared more, the arrival of security or the sound of her own heartbeat. She stared down at her hands. The mark of the slap was gone, but the heat remained, crawling under her skin. In her mind, the scene replayed over and over. The sound, the silence, the eyes that pretended not to see. Aiko, her fellow attendant, appeared beside her. They're boarding the response team now, she said quietly. Medical first, then management. Yuri nodded, but her throat locked. And the passengers? They'll all be interviewed separately. You too. Of course, Yuri whispered, voice brittle. Protocol. Aiko hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I sent the clip to the ethics portal. The video. Yuri's head snapped up. It wasn't revenge, Aiko said quickly. It was truth. The boy's vitals matched the time of the incident. The system confirmed everything. The captain had no choice but to divert. Yuri's eyes glistened. You could have just let it die quietly. Aiko met her gaze evenly. So could you. Yuri looked away, the words cutting deeper than she expected. Outside, paramedics climbed the boarding stairs, their vests flashing under the sun. Mina watched through the half-closed curtain as they approached, a strange calm settling over her. She wasn't angry anymore, just tired. A young medic crouched beside her seat. Ma'am, we're here to check your son. Kenji stirred, blinking at the bright light. We stopped? He asked, groggy. Yes, sweetheart, Mina said softly. Just a little detour. He frowned. Did I break the plane? Mina smiled weakly. No, love, you fixed it. The medic smiled at that, checking the boy's pulse. He's okay, he said. A little adrenaline spike, but stable. A man in a dark blazer approached next. Mr. Kato, Aurora Pacific's head of cabin operations. His tone was careful, formal, rehearsed. Ms. Sato, he said, bowing slightly. On behalf of Aurora Pacific, I want to personally apologize for the incident you experienced. We are deeply ashamed. Mina met his eyes. Are you sorry for what happened? Or for who saw it? He blinked, caught off guard. For both, I suppose. That's a start, she said quietly. Behind him, another figure stepped through the curtain. Yuri. Her posture was stiff, her uniform immaculate again. But her face, pale, raw, trembling, betrayed the effort it took to stand. "Mina," she began, voice barely audible. "May I—" Mr. Kato cut in sharply. "Ms. Tanaka, this is not the—" "It's okay," Mina said, raising a hand. "Let her speak." The officer hesitated, then nodded. Yuri swallowed hard. "I don't have words good enough for what I did," she said. "You trusted me with safety, and I gave you harm. I broke every rule I claimed to protect." She turned toward the boy. "Kenji, I'm sorry." Kenji looked at her, unsure. He didn't flinch this time, just studied her with that calm, unfiltered gaze children have before the world teaches them judgment. "It's okay," he said quietly. "Just don't hit anybody else." The word struck harder than any reprimand. Yuri nodded, eyes glistening. "I won't, ever." When they stepped off the plane, the tropical air hit like warm water. Reporters had not yet arrived, but the airport was already buzzing. Whispers, cameras, executives in crisp suits moving with uneasy urgency. Mina carried Kenji down the stairs, the sunlight soft on their faces. At the base of the stairway stood a group of airline officials, some bowing, some avoiding eye contact. One man stepped forward, the regional director, older, dignified, visibly shaken. "We're arranging accommodations and transportation for all passengers," he said. "And Ms. Sato, your family has been notified." Mina nodded, exhaustion written in every line of her face. "My family already knows," she said. "They built this airline." The man froze, realization dawning. "You're—" "Yes," she said simply. "But right now, I'm just an aunt trying to make sure my nephew sleeps without fear." Her words hung in the air. The director bowed low. Inside the terminal, passengers from Flight 871 gathered in a waiting area, hushed and restless. When Mina entered, the noise dropped to nothing. People looked up, not at her, but at Kenji, his small frame dwarfed by the bright concourse lights. Then, one by one, they stood. No one spoke. But the gesture, quiet, collective, human, filled the space with a kind of reverence no apology could match. Aiko, still in uniform, approached Mina, handing her a small envelope. "For you," she said. "It's from HQ. They wanted to thank you for handling everything with dignity." Mina smiled faintly. "That's an expensive word." "Not this time," Aiko said. "They mean it." Mina slipped the envelope into her bag without looking. "Then I'll believe them when I see change." Outside, the grounded Dreamliner gleamed under the sunlight, silver, sleek, but no longer spotless. For the first time, Mina saw beauty in that imperfection. Kenji tugged at her sleeve. "Auntie?" "Yes, love? Can we draw a new plane when we get home?" "Of course," she said. "What will we name it?" He thought for a moment, serious as always. "Grounded Sky," he said finally, "because even when it lands, it's still brave." Mina smiled through her tears. "That's perfect." She looked one last time at the aircraft that had carried both cruelty and courage, silence and awakening, and whispered, "Thank you for stopping when the world wouldn't." The engines clicked as they cooled, releasing one last breath of heat into the air. And beneath the hum of the airport, the quiet sound of reform had already begun. The press conference took place on a cloudless morning in Sydney. The marble floors of the Aurora Pacific headquarters glimmered under the light. Too clean, too polished, like a stage trying to forget the play it hosted. Rows of reporters filled the atrium, microphones lined up like tiny weapons of truth. Behind the podium stood Arjun Morales, his tie slightly askew, eyes tired but steady. On the screen behind him, the Aurora Pacific logo faded into a new banner. Passenger Dignity Initiative. Accountability begins with us. The crowd buzzed softly until he raised a hand. 2 weeks ago, Arjun began, voice even but weighted. One of our flights diverted to Cairns after an incident that should never have happened. A child was struck by one of our crew members. My son, Kenji Morales. The murmurs rippled like wind through tall grass. Cameras flashed, but Arjun didn't flinch. I stand here not as a CEO defending a brand, he said, but as a father demanding change from the very system I built. Mina watched from the side of the stage, arms crossed, heart full. Kenji sat beside her, swinging his legs, headphones around his neck. He was drawing again, his comfort language, sketching a plane over water, the tail painted gold. Arjun continued. For too long, the airline industry has treated dignity as an amenity, something offered to the privileged, not a right shared by all. That ends today. He paused, letting silence work like punctuation. Effective immediately, Aurora Pacific is implementing the following reforms. A new passenger dignity clause, guaranteeing that any customer, regardless of class, age, or background, can trigger an internal ethics review through our mobile app. A $650,000 fund to establish the Child Safety and Empathy Reform Program, supporting training for all flight crew. Mandatory psychological and empathy certification for leadership and frontline staff. Transparent reporting of all in-flight misconduct, accessible publicly every quarter. He looked down for a moment, then back up, his voice softening. And for those who ask about accountability, yes, the crew member involved, Ms. Yuri Tanaka, has been placed in the Passenger Relations Reform Team, not to erase her mistake, but to ensure no one else repeats it. Justice must repair, not destroy. A reporter raised a hand. Mr. Morales, isn't that lenient? Shouldn't she be fired? Arjun shook his head. If punishment alone could fix cruelty, we'd have done it by now. But it's empathy that prevents it. The room quieted. Somewhere in the back, a camera clicked softly, capturing that single sentence that would later headline dozens of articles. When the press event ended, Arjun stepped down, his breath shaky for the first time. Mina met him halfway. "You sounded like Dad," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is," she said. "But Dad never had to explain why the system broke. You did, and you did it with grace." They walked to the side hall where Kenji sat waiting, holding up his drawing like a reporter holding a scoop. "Look, Daddy," he said proudly. "It's our new plane. It's called Hope 1. Arjun crouched, looking at the drawing. The gold tails shimmered under the atrium lights, the sun, drawn, smiling in the corner. "Can I hang this in the lobby?" he asked. Kenji's grin widened. "Only if you promise not to let it crumple." "I promise," Arjun said. Outside the building, a crowd had gathered. Employees, passengers, even strangers who'd seen the live broadcast. When Arjun, Mina, and Kenji stepped out, they were met not with applause but with something quieter. Respect. A woman in an airport maintenance uniform stepped forward, holding out a small bouquet of paper cranes. "For your son," she said, "for what he reminded us." Kenji took them gently. "Thank you," he whispered. The crowd parted as they walked toward the edge of the plaza, where a new sign had been unveiled overnight. It was small, simple, unpolished, yet carried the gravity of something sacred. Aurora Pacific Charter of Dignity. Every passenger carries a story. Every story deserves respect. Mina read it aloud, quietly, her voice trembling. Every story deserves respect. She looked at her brother. "That's what you were trying to build all along, isn't it?" Arjun nodded. "I just forgot that systems without souls collapse," Kenji reminded me. That afternoon, as the family prepared to leave, the board released the financial report. Diversion cost, $42,500. Compensation to affected family, $7,500. Training investment, $650,000. PR losses, negligible. But the real currency was public trust. For the first time in weeks, Aurora Pacific's social feeds filled not with outrage, but with something rarer, hope. One viral comment summed it up best. They didn't bury the story, they turned it into a compass. At sunset, the three of them stood on the balcony overlooking the tarmac. A plane taxied into view, its tail glowing gold, letters newly painted in calm white. Passenger dignity. Kenji pressed his face against the glass. That's Hope 1, isn't it? Mina smiled. Looks like they renamed it for you. Arjun knelt beside him. You know, that plane isn't just metal and engines anymore. It's a promise. Kenji tilted his head. Promises can fly? Only if people believe in them, Arjun said. Kenji thought for a long moment. Then we should make lots of promises. Mina laughed softly. That's what stories are for, sweetheart. As the plane took off, its engines hummed like a hymn, leaving a streak of gold against the fading blue. Arjun wrapped his arm around his sister's shoulder, watching the silhouette disappear into the distance. Do you think people will forgive us? He asked quietly. Mina nodded. They already have. You didn't hide behind power. You used it. He let out a long breath, as if releasing the last of his guilt into the sky. Kenji's voice rose softly beside them, half whisper, half song. Everyone gets a seat. Everyone belongs. And as the glow of Hope 1 faded into the clouds, Aurora Pacific's logo shimmered faintly on the horizon. Not as a brand, but as a belief reborn. For the first time, the company that had once flown above people's heads had finally learned to fly with their hearts. It was late afternoon in Sydney when Yuri Tanaka walked through the glass doors of Aurora Pacific's Human Resources building. The light outside was warm and forgiving, but inside the air felt dense, sterile, almost judicial. Her uniform was neatly pressed, her hair tied back with precision, but her eyes gave her away. No amount of symmetry could hide the sleepless nights, or the silence that had followed the flight heard around the world. She approached the reception desk where a young staffer looked up, clearly recognizing her. Miss Tanaka, the woman said softly, voice neutral but kind. They're waiting for you upstairs, conference room 4. Yuri nodded, clutching the envelope in her hands, a folded apology letter she'd written 3 times and rewritten 4. She had no idea if she'd be allowed to read it, or if it even mattered anymore. Upstairs, 3 people sat at a long wooden table. Mr. Kato, head of cabin operations, composed but visibly weary. Dr. Leon, the same ethics mediator from the restorative session. And Arjun Morales, CEO, the father of the boy she had hurt. When Yuri entered, the room fell silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. She stopped just inside the doorway, her palms slick against the envelope. Mr. Kato was the first to speak. Ms. Tanaka, please sit. She did. The leather chair creaked quietly, as if even it wasn't comfortable being here. Dr. Leon opened the meeting. This session is not disciplinary, she said calmly. The company has already made its public statement. What we're here for is accountability, the kind that isn't for headlines. Yuri nodded, voice soft. I understand. Arjun leaned forward slightly. His tone was even, almost disarmingly gentle. I've read your statement. I know you've participated in the Passenger Relations Reform Program, but I wanted to hear directly from you what you think happened that day. Her throat tightened. I lost sight, she said simply, of what my job meant, of what people mean. Arjun's gaze didn't waver. And now? Now I understand that service without empathy isn't order, it's control. I thought I was upholding standards, but I was really protecting fear. The words hung in the air. There was something raw in them, unpolished but true. Dr. Leon nodded slowly. You've completed all restorative modules. Your peers report improvement. But healing isn't just professional, Miss Tanaka. It's relational. Yuri hesitated. If I could, I'd like to read something. Mr. Kato gave a small nod. Go ahead. She unfolded the letter carefully. Her voice trembled but didn't break. To the passengers of Flight 871, I once believed that dignity was something you earned, by status, by silence, by perfection. I know now it's something you owe to everyone you meet, especially those who can't defend themselves. I can't erase what I did to that child, but I can carry it as a promise, to protect others the way I should have protected him. I am sorry, not because I was caught, but because I finally understand the weight of what I became when I stopped seeing people as people." When she finished, the room stayed quiet. Even Mr. Kato, normally clinical, sat motionless. Arjun exhaled slowly. "Do you know what surprised me most that day?" he asked. She looked up. "What?" "That after everything, my son still looked at you with pity, not hatred." Her breath hitched. "He's 4, Arjun continued. "He doesn't understand corporate hierarchies, or policies, or bias. He only understands kindness. And somehow, he still believes you can be kind again. That's why I didn't fire you." Yuri blinked, stunned. You knew that?" "I watched the footage," he said. "The way you froze after it happened. That wasn't pride. That was horror. You knew immediately you'd betrayed something sacred." She swallowed hard. "I'll never forgive myself." "You don't have to," Arjun said quietly. "You just have to make sure the next scared person in your care feels safe." 2 hours later, the meeting ended with no press releases, no cameras, no applause. Just signatures on a paper titled Restorative Completion and Future Role Assignment. When Yuri stepped outside, the sun had dropped low, painting the sky in amber streaks. She paused on the sidewalk, the city noise rising around her, car horns, chatter, the sound of planes passing overhead. For the first time in months, she looked up without flinching. A Dreamliner cut across the fading sky, its tail painted gold. The same golden hue from the Passenger Dignity Initiative posters now hung in every terminal. Across its fuselage, the name gleamed in soft letters, Hope 1. Her breath caught. She watched until the plane vanished into the clouds, then took out her phone and opened the Aurora Pacific employee portal. Her new assignment flashed across the screen. Position, Passenger Care Mentor Base. Haneda Airport Program. Quiet Wings. Empathy Training Division. At the bottom, a note signed by Arjun himself. "This isn't redemption. It's responsibility. Teach them what you learned the hard way." She smiled, small, sad, but real. That evening, as she walked along the harbor, a small figure came running down the promenade. It was Kenji, hand in hand with Mina, his aunt. They had just come from a public event at the museum, where Aurora Pacific had unveiled a child passenger exhibit titled Every Seat Matters. Yuri froze, unsure if she should turn away. But Mina saw her first and smiled. "Miss Tanaka," she called. "Good timing. Kenji wanted to show you something." The boy ran up, holding a folded paper airplane. He offered it with both hands. "It's for you," he said shyly. Yuri hesitated. "For me?" "Yeah. Auntie says people can change if they want to." Her throat closed. "Do you forgive me?" Kenji thought for a moment. The kind of pause that only children can make feel like eternity. Then he nodded. "If you say sorry again." Yuri knelt down, tears stinging. "I'm sorry, Kenji." He smiled, satisfied. "Then it's okay." Mina placed a gentle hand on Yuri's shoulder. "The world doesn't fix itself in a day, but it just did a little bit more right now." Yuri nodded, looking at the tiny paper plane in her hand. The word hope was scribbled on its wing in crayon. As she watched him run ahead toward the setting sun, she whispered to herself, "Hope 1." And for the first time since that terrible flight, she felt the ground beneath her, solid, forgiving, human. Because justice, she realized, wasn't about grounding others. It was about learning how to fly again. The morning sun broke over the horizon like a slow exhale, washing the Sydney tarmac in pale gold. The airport was just waking, the faint rumble of baggage carts, the chatter of ground crew, the soft scent of jet fuel mingled with dew. Inside Gate 14, Kenji Morales, now 5, stood on tiptoe against the glass, watching his father's newest aircraft roll into position. Its tail shimmered under the light, gold and white, with 3 calm words etched along its body. Where everyone belongs. Behind him, Mina zipped his tiny backpack, smiling. "You're tall enough to see without climbing now," she said. I'm almost 6, Kenji announced proudly, pressing his palm against the glass. Do you think she remembers me? Mina followed his gaze to the plane. I think she remembers everything, she said softly. Airplanes don't forget the ones who taught them kindness. Arjun approached from behind, still in his uniform but without the weight he used to carry. Ready for your first flight since Hope 1? He asked. Kenji nodded solemnly. I packed crayons this time, for drawing, not emergencies. Arjun chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. Good. Let's hope we only need art today. The three of them boarded with a quiet dignity. No cameras, no ceremony. Just the calm rhythm of ordinary travel. Inside, the new family dignity cabin gleamed softly, its layout redesigned from top to bottom. Seats were wider, lighting warmer, and each monitor displayed a message before takeoff. You are safe. You are seen. You are welcome. Passengers murmured their appreciation, some recognizing the Morales family but too respectful to intrude. Across the aisle, a flight attendant approached. Yuri Tanaka, no longer in navy blue, but in the new pearl gray uniform of the Empathy Mentor Division. Her badge read, Instructor, Passenger Care Training. Mr. Morales, she greeted, bowing slightly. Welcome aboard. Arjun rose to shake her hand. Good to see you, Ms. Tanaka. It's good to be here, she said, voice steady. Then she knelt beside Kenji's seat. And you, Captain Morales Jr.? She teased gently. Are you ready to inspect the cabin? Kenji grinned, his eyes lighting up. Everything looks perfect. You remembered the window stickers. Of course, she said. You designed them. He blushed. I just drew the stars. Well, she said, smiling, they make the night sky less lonely. Mina watched quietly from across the aisle, the corners of her eyes crinkling. The circle had closed, not in vengeance, but in reform. As the engines began their low hum, Arjun leaned toward the window. You know, he said to Mina, when the world first saw the footage, I thought we were finished, but it turned out we were just starting. Mina nodded. People didn't want perfection. They wanted proof that systems could change. He smiled faintly. And we gave them both, progress and peace. The seatbelt light blinked off, and the plane rose gracefully into the blue. Below, the Pacific stretched like a mirror, endless, reflective, and forgiving. Kenji opened his sketchbook, tongue poking out in concentration. I'm drawing Hope too, he said. Oh? Arjun asked. What's her story? She's smaller, Kenji explained. She helps people who got scared of flying to try again. She never rushes them. Arjun exchanged a look with Mina, that small, knowing look shared between people who'd seen the world at its worst and still believed in its best. That's a good mission, Arjun said. Maybe the best one yet. Hours later, as the flight reached cruising altitude, Yuri made her rounds. Every gesture carried the ease of someone who had rebuilt herself brick by brick. She stopped briefly by Mina's seat. Thank you, Yuri said quietly. Mina looked up. For what? For letting me belong again, she replied. For believing in change. Mina shook her head. It wasn't belief. It was observation. You did the work. You earned it. Yuri smiled, a small, peaceful curve that reached her eyes. Then maybe we all did. Halfway through the journey, the captain's calm voice came over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Ito. We're flying at 35,000 feet, and I'd like to dedicate this leg of our journey to the passengers who remind us that dignity isn't a privilege. It's the air we share. Applause rose softly, not loud, but warm, sincere. Kenji clapped along, not because he fully understood, but because it felt right. Arjun reached for his son's hand. You did that, he whispered. Kenji tilted his head. I didn't fly the plane. No, Arjun said, smiling. You reminded it why it should. When they landed in Tokyo, dusk had already fallen. The terminal lights cast long golden reflections on the polished floor. Passengers disembarked slowly, exchanging nods and quiet goodbyes. At the gate, a small plaque caught Mina's eye. It read, "Dedicated to every traveler who chose empathy over indifference. Aurora Pacific, Year 2 of the Passenger Dignity Charter." Mina touched the edge of the plaque, her throat tightening. "You really did it," she whispered to her brother. He smiled, eyes soft. "No," he said. "We did." Kenji tugged on his sleeve. "Can we go home now?" "Yeah," Arjun said. "Home sounds perfect." They walked together through the terminal. The CEO, the aunt, the child who changed everything, and the woman who'd once broken a world and helped rebuild it. As they stepped into the cool night air, a new plane roared overhead, golden tail glinting against the stars. Its engines were steady, its course sure. Mina glanced up. "You think people will remember?" Arjun nodded, watching it disappear into the clouds. "Not just people. The sky will." Kenji squeezed his father's hand. "Then it's okay," he said simply. "The sky's on our side." And with that, the night settled. Calm, vast, and full of quiet promise. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar like thunder. Sometimes it drifts like clouds, silent, steady, and impossible to ignore.